All right, Bannock County Commissioners are back in session. We're still in budgets, and we have the Sheriff. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. And
Okay, Tony Monty, Bannock County Sheriff.
Alex Hamilton, Chief Deputy, Sheriff's Office.
So we're here to present our budget for 2025. I guess my question is, where do you want to start? I mean, it's
Sheriff?
Sheriff's budget?
Yeah, sure.
B budget?
Why don't you run through A real quick?
Okay.
Well,
Why don't I do A last, and I'll
Okay.
do all of A
that works.
to include sheriff,
That works.
jail,
Yep.
because it's all kind of inclusive.
Yep.
That work?
Yeah.
Okay. Sheriff B budget. Let me find the correct page. As far as Sheriff B budget, if you run the numbers, basically it's a 21.7% difference for sheriff from last year. And I think the big, which is, if you want a dollar amount, it's $254,000 in difference in, from the ask from previous year. Half of that is also obviously the leased vehicles. 107,000 of that is the leased vehicles for this upcoming year. The other increase of noticeable increase would be the sheriff's critical incident. Oh, let me get my glasses.
The critical equipment.
Critical equipment, yes.
Critical equipment.
This is
Yeah.
the whole thing on this first page one?
Yes, on the lower half, that's the sheriff B budget side.
$250,000 in cost savings.
No.
No, that's a difference, increase.
That's an increase.
That's an increase.
Oh, okay, now I see, okay. This is
Yeah.
different than the one you have. Okay,
just the way it's set up, where you
Right.
you had last year's over here. And
now I was
Yeah.
going this direction, now I have to go back
But this
the other
only has two
direction.
columns, so.
Yeah.
Yep,
And then the other noticeable would be the K-9. And that's going to be offset by, we're actually trying to get a third K-9. And I say third, but it's actually going to be replacing the one that's going to be going out of service. Our oldest dog, which is 10 years old, I believe, is it 10? And very old. And usually they don't last that long. And it's a matter of trying to replace that one. The goal is ultimately get 3. But the cost of that's the actual cost. I think part of that, the purchase of the dog is going to be, we're going to try to use asset forfeiture money to pay for the actual dog itself. And then I think the dog of that cost is, dog's about $13,000 itself, right around there. So the cost of the dog's in there. But like I said, we're going to purchase it with asset forfeiture money as far as the cost. But we included it just so there's a true cost of what you see.
Yeah.
The other noticeable increase, like I said, the vehicles, that was the increase. And another big one of that was the just the leases. And then the other one would be education, and that's the training increase.
Do you want to go one more year on leases to determine if we should start buying or lease?
Yeah, because I think that's I think we committed to 5, and this will be our 4th. I think 2025 will be our 5th, correct? I think, yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's 5th, and then we'll see what those residuals are.
Okay.
So, but ultimately, whatever's best, we can, I mean, if we want to go back to purchasing, it doesn't matter to us. It's a matter of just getting the cars, and, so,
Kind of depends on how much we sell those back for.
Right.
Down on the ones that we sell back and see how much money that we coop from those. whether
yeah.
it's
Well, it was like
a
last
benefit.
year. Last year, we got a lot more than we anticipated.
Right.
Was able to get that van, if you remember that. But
Yep.
we never got that much money back from selling our old cars. So I will say Bancor was good at that as far as getting the higher end of the spectrum for money, as far as, and the changeover is easy. They come and get them, and we don't have to do a thing. Sits at the shops. They come and get them once you guys determine which ones you guys are going to jimmy out to the other agent departments. We set them up at the shops, they show up, they take them, and they send a check. And it's all said and done. We don't have to worry about any of that. Don't have to worry about an auction, don't have to worry about any of that, so
Yeah.
it's pretty clean that way. As far as any notable changes, those are the highlight ones. The other ones that are like $1,000. If you want me to go over each one, every one of them,
It's not necessary.
okay.
I mean, if you look back, there's lots of detail,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as always in these books.
And just like anything else, we get it, there's things that we can necessarily don't have to get as this process continues. And I know once we meet and we put a microscope under all this, there's definitely areas that we know that could be different or less or whatever.
Right.
Jail, are we good with that?
Did you want to go over your critical equipment, or was there anything in there you wanted to talk about?
It's pretty spelled out. We could go over that.
Well, and I like to say it's in the descriptions there and stuff, but I just didn't, you mentioned it.
Like I said, critical equipment, like I said, a lot of it is necessities that we feel like, but there are some things that we could. I will say there are some things in this critical equipment that's included because we are asking for a position, so some of that could come out in some of this critical, like a radio, like a,
Well, it's about $15,000 worth of equipment that's on the,
that's on this that can come out if a position isn't allotted.
if it's not
If that
allowed.
makes sense. So there is some room for, depending on what happens with a budget request and a position. So
Usually Teresa's really good about if we don't approve new positions.
we
then
take it
she'll
out.
Tell me where to cut.
Okay.
And we're always conscious of that. And I'm always aware of what things can come out immediately if we aren't awarded a position, certain things that are attached to whatever is being cut. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, but as far as critical equipment, criminal division, ammo, detectives, that's all stuff that they are requesting for but as far as the new request, that's kind of the big one, the 14, like I said, that's probably that is the area where if that position isn't allotted, that 1485 that can immediately come out. So that's why it's categorized like that new request. Other than that, I don't have anything else on B budget unless you guys have questions on that. I think if you look at that booklet, it's pretty self-explanatory. Some of the areas on that column where there are increases, I just wanted to highlight the bigger ones. So,
Anything on that side?
No.
Okay.
JLB budget. So, JLB budget's about a 10% increase from previous year. To highlight some of that, the difference is about $397,000, $974. Probably the big one that would probably wipe out all that big of a difference is the one request of a new generator, which is $300,000. That's probably the biggest difference in this budget is just that. The backup generator that we have, which is the original from the time, I know it was originally in our ARPA request,
Yeah.
but it was something we took out. But it's also something, we know the generator could last a little bit longer, so it's not something it's definitely, it needs to be looked at sooner than later, but that's probably the biggest offset of this increase in the B budget for the jail.
So if we have sufficient reserves, we could just utilize those dollars since it's a large one-time. And we probably need to move that, instead of 461, it would need to go down to a 900 account because it's going to be a capital.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. We just put it under a project, so.
Yep, we got it.
But that's really the biggest difference in that, is that the other increase are just the common medical increase, the 5% medical increase, which is within the contract. they were gracious enough to have a conversation with myself and the chief, and we kept it at that contract, CPI, and Summit Foods, the food for prisoner food. It was the 4.2, I think. They wanted, I think, almost 6%, but we talked them down to 4, which was a 4.2?
Yes.
Something like
Sheriff
that.
negotiated that down with them to 4.2.
So,
It says 4.5 here.
4.5.
Oh.
Maybe, I can't remember what it was.
4.2.
I couldn't remember. Something's 4.2, I don't know which one.
Oh, I just see what it says there on the side, so.
But those three are the big major increases. Other than that, without the generator, it's almost the same ask as last year. Pretty minimal.
Jeff is watching.
Jeff's watching, he sent you a message.
He likes the idea of reserves for the generator.
Well, good.
I guess the last one would be court security. And that, for a lot of reasons, it's that we have like an average of 429% difference. But that's obviously for a lot of reasons. Number one, the Evolve system, which is still in the budget, but it's a matter of, we still haven't decided how we're gonna do that. I know we decided to go to RFP with that system, but it's still in our current budget, which, do something?
Should we roll that over in anticipation of doing something? It's reserves, it's already budgeted for, it's 275.77.
I didn't see it here.
It's not in this year's, in 25's request, but that's the question is.
It's in our current.
Yeah, it's
Right.
correct.
Yeah,
It's in 24's, but it's something we still need, I'm assuming.
well,
And it's something that, like I said, it's something that's from our last ask from last year. I'm just trying to explain the difference and why our ask isn't as big this year, is because we don't know what we're doing with the Evolve.
Right.
It's a matter of what are we gonna do with that money?
So it looks like they dropped the budget by 260,000, but it's because of that capital.
yeah, and future upgrades, that's the bottom line there. Saying that,
Right.
so,
And there's no cameras or servers because that's part of the ARPA. We moved that,
yeah.
remember?
Yeah.
So,
Jeff feels like we should roll that forward.
No.
I mean, it's not gonna hurt, it's reserves we already have budgeted. We can roll it forward and hopefully towards the end of 25, when ARPA projects slow down because they're completing,
Yeah,
then we can start the process of looking into it again.
I mean, put it back on,
Okay.
I'd say. And that's just kind of like earlier when we talked about so many things. We'll have the conversation, put it on to start with, and then we can move it
well,
off.
I was just,
whatever.
that's why I'm explaining why there's a difference of 200 and some odd thousand difference from this year than last year on the ask.
Well, you look good. I mean, heck. Everything else is the other direction.
Well, I mean, jail is basically one project,
Yeah.
and we're about the same. So,
And that's the interesting part is, I mean, a lot of projects that we talked about with you guys especially was ARPA projects too.
and that was
They
kind of
made
our
the list
goal.
or didn't make the list and where we're at. So it's,
And that was our goal with ARPA, was trying to knock out some of those long-term, big dollar projects for the, obviously for the long-term future, so our B budget isn't affected as much and
yeah.
make room for other areas. So, which I think is something we accomplished. It's, as these projects, hopefully these projects, I know you're worried about projects that completed, but I think we're on the right track, so.
Okay.
That's
Any
basically the 3B budgets.
Anything?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
You wanna talk salaries now?
Oh, yes.
So, I will say, but before we move on, as far as B budgets and overall, so you guys, on our last inspection, And I just think this is very, very compelling data. So our last inspection you saw, when we, obviously PREA, we passed, all the inspections we passed, but the state mandated inspection, you saw that, how our jails operating under the current state average, which was $129.92 per inmate. And we're actually functioning right now at $98.22. So basically, and that's per inmate. So it's $31.70 difference that we're running per inmate per day, and that's a per day average. So when you do the math, in annual savings, that's $3 million, $8,330 that our jail is running efficiently under the average of what most jails are. I mean, to me, that's a noticeable number, thinking our guys are doing a damn good job of running efficiently. I mean, sometimes these numbers get skewed on the cost of things, but I will tell you, we are constantly trying to do things as efficient as possible, and that those kind of numbers show, you know, especially when the inspector comes in, man, you guys are running way underneath the average cost per inmate from the rest of the state. So, I don't know, I think it's very commendable to our staff and the long-term knowledge that we have for these guys that are here, so.
Well, and we've mentioned it, I mean, just the looks of the jail and the feel of the jail and everything, when we come out and do them inspections,
Yeah,
there's a noticeable difference. I mean, and that reflects on both of you two and your leadership.
but it's, I don't know, we just had a staff meeting last Tuesday, and we talked about the last 3.5 years of what we have accomplished. And it's interesting how much you don't realize when you ask each division with a week notice, say, I need you to tell me all the accomplishments in the last 3.5 years, some of the challenges, and what our goals are in the next 4.5 years. And when you come up with 3 pages of accomplishments, and it's funny because it's easy to forget what we've accomplished in the last 3.5 years, and the difference, the strides we made from when I became sheriff to where we are now. And even our staff's like, man, I didn't realize we did all this. And not only that, you had other captains going, I'm glad we talked about this because I didn't realize that division accomplished all that. And I would say it's important, I think everybody kind of talks to their employees about what they've accomplished since you've taken office. It's pretty cool because it makes you feel good about what you're doing in our positions when you hear the things and the challenges. And usually the challenges are pretty minor when all the accomplishments they have kind of overshadows all the challenges, and it kind of motivates them again. Hey man, we got 4 more years to make this even better. So really cool. And it's funny. I mean, I've got notes and notes of their accomplishments, and then the challenges were pretty minimal, you know.
Well, just one example of that, I'll just give you one example, is that like the last couple of years when I've been part of the budget, we've asked for increases in our training. And now at the sheriff's office, I've gone through the stats of that. And really, as far as our training be all within side, we're only down 2 critical liability instructors in our whole office that we have to send people out to do their own training with. So we're doing all that training in-house, which and then saves money because we're not shipping these people all out to be trained somewhere else. And so it's a pretty good accomplishment, especially when we compare ourselves to other agencies where
they're calling us to train them.
Yeah, now they're calling
especially
us.
the surrounding agencies. We need a trainer. Can we borrow your guy? You got to pay for him. You know, or you can come to our class, but you got to pay for that.
Yeah, because we have our own canines. We're the leaders in SWAT team. Now we even have a reconstructionist for accidents. I've never seen that in 32
We've
years.
never had one.
I've worked here, and now we have one of those, and so we're just really making leaps and bounds with all our training and what we've done at the sheriff's office.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I reflect on in the time that we've been here is, and you're the one that initiated it, and you wanted the exterior fence. And Jason says, I have money in my budget.
100%.
And we quit siloing
Yep.
and worrying about our own little section of the world, and says, okay, let's do what's best for the county. And that was a tipping point in my opinion. It was early on when we come in, and it was one of them deals that, okay, how do we make Bannock County the leader. That's the whole goal. And I always reflect back to that. It was a turning point.
And we haven't even run these numbers with our whole staff yet. But I just, to me, I look at those numbers, I think, damn, that's $3 million that you don't see, obviously. But for us to run the facility, it's like, well, we can just tell them, the commissions, that's just the cost of doing business. We don't need to run efficient. You have to pay for this, But it's not the case. It's one of those, we're always, our administration is always trying to be conscious of how they do it, So I just, to me, that's a big deal. When I see those numbers, that's a big deal to me, And I just wanted to make that known. It's not, we don't take it for granted, We just don't have for frivolous things. It's a matter of, there's a strategy behind it. So that's, to me, it's huge. So, because it is. You can easily say, well, they'll fund it. They have to, So,
When
big
there's
deal.
no dollars, there's no dollars.
Right.
Plain and simple.
So, a budget. So I'll encompass all of it. So, obviously, the last, since I became sheriff, the goal was kind of just basically do a lot of push toward, number one, trying to create our own scale for various reasons, which was accomplished last year, and I think it makes it easier for us to make adjustments. Now, this current budget, this is kind of our last step of the overall goal of what we want to accomplish since I took over was, number one, try to alleviate any of that compression that we have on the top, between mid to the top. And it's been there since the day I started, and what I mean by that is when we turn in a salary rate approval, when somebody gets promoted, it's one of those, okay, he's been here 25 years. He's getting promoted to this new position. Where do we put him on the scale of this new position? Because he's been here this long. If he goes to the minimum of that new position, he takes a pay cut. If we slide him on that scale of the new position, do you put him ahead of a guy that's been in that, let's just say a corporal, been a corporal for 3 years, but he hasn't been here as long as this guy that recently got promoted? Where do you put that as far as internal equity? Institutional knowledge to a new supervisory role with more liability versus somebody that's less experienced but's been in that supervisory role a little longer, maybe a couple years, and there was always that, where do you put them? And so we, as a chief and I, would have to go in there and go, well, you don't want to put him higher, even though he hasn't been here that long, but you can't put him more than the guy that's making money, or to even put him in the same money. But nowhere on that scale was it equitable because he was going to take a pay cut. So you had to move him way up the scale on that next position. So there was so many internal problems. And then when we turn in the salary rate approval form, it's like, well, why is this guy getting a bigger raise and percentage-wise? Well, because it just kind of worked out that way as far as his experience. He increased. So our goal this year was to get rid of that, where if a 20-year guy, let's say a regular deputy, been here 20 years, never had any goal to promote. So now all of a sudden he gets motivated and says, yeah, I want to promote to corporal, he gets the position. Well, he can go in now with this new, our proposal, he can go to minimum and there's no overlap. His clock starts now, there's no overlap. It's minimum to whatever that max steps are. So that was the goal, was to get rid of that compression. It wasn't necessarily from lower entry deputy to corporal. It was more that mid-corporal, sergeant, lieutenant. When I became a lieutenant from a sergeant, I got a 29-cent raise. And I'm going, well, I don't want to be a lieutenant because I don't get overtime and I can work sergeant, work all the overtime I want and make way more than a lieutenant and don't have to have the headache. So that was the other goal, is get rid of that. No motivation to be promoted. And it's funny because there was a lot of our institutional knowledge guys that they don't want to promote because they were going to lose money in the deal. So with this new proposal, as far as our classified positions, it gets rid of all that. Gets rid of the compression, but also we've shortened the terms from not a 10-step, but either 5 or 6 steps, because our thought is if you're a deputy, to be proficient, and it was all about proficiency of the job. At what time are they going to be proficient in their position? And we figured it was 5 or 6 years. You should know your job. But as you go up the ranks, from a corporal to a sergeant, it should take you less years to be proficient sergeant. Sergeant to lieutenant, maybe 2 years. Lieutenant to captain, you better be ready when you become a captain. So captain is 1 step, you're done. Lieutenant, I believe it was 2 or 3 steps at the max, you're done. And the rest is COLA, or the thought is at some point, if the county decides to have a market adjustment or market study, that's when we make any kind of adjustment request. But for us, is once you get to that proficiency, it's COLAs and you're done. So that's kind of the goal of what we did. And in order to accomplish that, it was a matter of you had to raise the top end another in order to move the compression levels and provide that cushion. So that was the deal. So when you look at our A budget, the numbers, so in sheriff, our A budget is in a difference between the ask for this year and last year. So I guess it's going to be presented 2 different ways. If with the new lieutenant position, which is what we're asking, it's about 12% different. Without the lieutenants, it's 9.2 difference, the overall budget ask on the sheriffs.
Clarification, I did ask them to move that wellness complex position, the officer, into this budget. It makes it easier for Teresa and I our office, to track the expenses, because they have critical equipment, they have overtime and all of that, those items. It was just easier to move in here. So that's one topic that needs to be approved by the board and the clerk. But it was just to simplify our lives.
Okay.
The position will still be categorized as the wellness complex in task.
And that's,
But,
And we'll talk a little bit more about that after this too.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about Hal wanting somebody. And
right.
we
But
don't-
when you see
I
an
mean,
increase,
We got a lot of
yeah.
maybe
We-
civil stuff in other departments that we might need to have a conversation about. And some enforcement abilities.
So when you see that increase there, a portion of that is also that position, just so you know.
yeah, we have to have a conversation about that. Anyway, that's funny. So when you're talking salaries, when you're talking all of A budget, 207K and all that include, with the new lieutenant position that we're asking and the wellness position, it's about a 7.1 difference from last year.
You did have 127,000 in there for an extra pay period. So we should take
Correct.
that number out
Right.
before you do your change. Because that distorts it a little bit.
It does.
Did I say that nice?
Yeah.
Alex is just laughing at me,
Because
so.
it looks better the other way.
Which is why I pointed it out.
All I'm saying is you caught them.
We knew that, we knew that.
We actually have it on our.
Yeah, we have it. And then without the new lieutenant position in wellness, it's about a 4.7 difference in our ask in sheriff's side, if that makes any sense.
Is that deputy that's up there, is he pretty much the same guy all the time?
Yes,
He's
which is
awesome.
good. He's really good. He loves it.
He's kicked me out twice, and it's awesome.
And
I love
he mixes it up between his sheriff's car, his patrol bike,
Yep.
The Ranger, I mean, and I think it's a lot better than he anticipated
Yeah.
as far as the duties.
Those,
But he still gets to patrol as well. From the time he closed the gates, he still has hours that he has to fulfill, and he does it as patrol. So,
it's been awesome. Those guys
and
that
we
are
really have,
hanging out down there doing who knows what all the time and harassing people, they just are starting to not come anymore because they know they're going to get kicked out anyways at 10 or whenever it is. It's been great.
and it's a hybrid hours right now. But that's a good start to figure out, okay, we'll assess it after this year and figure out, okay, was this a good plan, or do we need to adjust something? So,
Yeah.
but
I'll get a compares the vandalism we had last year compared to this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's good. He does a good job.
And your on-call is working out?
on call has been really good. Yeah.
And even though I did throw that out there about the extra pay period, your increase really was not that much.
No, when you look at the big side of things, it's not. Jail side, A budget, same thing. Obviously, it's the same people that we're dealing with as far as classified position, getting rid of that compression. So, 'cause compression was agency-wide. And if you look at the book, I kind of explained there, I mean, this eliminates all the inequities that we've had, and we would be set for a good period of time until whatever market adjustments we decide as a county need to happen county-wide. It's one of those. And the other part of trying to adjust and shorten those timeframes, when you think about it, for us, hiring people is a challenge. And a lot of it was pay. And obviously the type of job, especially when you're starting in the jail. Just a quick stat, like since January 23, we've hired 35 people, 35 people. So it's not a matter of trying to get people to the door, it's a matter of making them stick. And it's a matter of, some of them have left for other agencies, some of them have left for the site, some of them left for, they just figured out, we've had a few people last a week said, this job's not for me, you know. So it's just a matter of how do you get them to stay. Money's part of it, so part of our goal was, okay, if we're gonna shorten those time frames as far as when you become proficient, it's kind of having that pay up front, and if they don't last, they don't last. But the money's there to get them through the door, but it's also a shorter time frame when they're decided to be proficient. And if we're losing them within 2 years, c'est la vie, but the offer's still there with decent money to say, hey, you can't leave, you're not leaving because of the money. Maybe, but it's gonna be maybe a 50-cent dollar more as far as comparing to the other agencies. And I will say, every part of this A budget was utilizing the comparison that you sent for Twin Falls County, Bonneville, Bingham, and Madison. So we used those 4 agencies that were supplied, I believe you,
Yep.
did you grab all that? Anyways, we get the spreadsheet of every
Yeah.
county employee in those 4 counties. So our gauge was, okay, what does the sheriff make here? What does the sheriff make there? So we started from the top down, and we didn't want to be the low end, but we also didn't ask for the high end of every position. It was kind of in between that medium and high as far as the high end of our scale. And it was trying to make us competitive with the comparisons that were provided for us. And to me, that was probably the most thorough comparison I've ever seen in all the years, because you actually got them from the clerks, I believe, of those counties. So it was nice to have, because you had every single position. And for us, it was a matter of, we compared the highs, the lows, and we shot somewhere in between, where we weren't necessarily the highest, but we weren't the lowest. So our pay grades were somewhere hitting not so high at the highest, but not the lowest. So that's where, when you look at our pay grades, it is right there. So we're in the thick of things.
Our numbers are still below the averages.
Yes.
So you talk about how many people you hired, how many vacancies you got now?
Right now, 6, which is better.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the last couple of years, you've been
Over
10 or
10.
above.
Are they in Which
in the
department?
jail.
They're in
It's
the,
always in the jail.
or all of them in the jail?
We've got one in patrol.
Don't look at me.
We've got
My son left.
one in dispatch, 6 in the jail. Our
But you'll-
dispatcher left for a emergency management position in Oregon,
Okay.
But you'll.
and our husband was there.
You'll attrition your patrol position.
All
from
the patrol will
jail
come from the
eventually.
jail.
So,
And as soon as all that, as soon as all dominoes fall, they'll get filled up. But it's the jail usually where everything starts. So, but I just want to get you an idea of where we came up with our numbers. It was valid numbers from what we were provided. Like I said, it wasn't the highest, but it wasn't the lowest. We shot for middle because it was just shooting to be competitive. And also not to make it so outrageous that these percentages come out ridiculous, which you still may think they're ridiculous, but it's an ask. So,
well, and this is about a third of our employees, if not more. So probably more.
jail, all of A, about a 3% increase is what, overall. If you're just talking overall A budget. Court security, overall A budget, about 1.6% increase. So, like I said, that's just kind of an idea of where we came with our numbers. Definitely wasn't just numbers we pulled out from thin air. It was definitely, I thank you for those comparisons, because like I said, we've never had something that thorough as far as numbers.
Yep.
And I know that was the numbers that the budget committee had.
Compensation committee.
Yeah, compensation committee, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
But that's overall A budget. That's kind of our goal, was really, biggest one was trying to get rid of that compression, where there's no overlapping when they move. Right now, if this happens, there's none of that. And then we're good for a good period of time, and like you said, until all of us figure, we need a market adjustment or COLAs, we're good. So, for me, that's probably the biggest deal, is that it sets us up for long-term, no really major adjustments in the future. So, that's probably the biggest thing I feel really good about with this. And,
So you sit on the salary committee also?
Yeah, I'm the
Alex
compensation
does,
committee. Yeah, I do.
yeah,
And I know the sheriff's probably sick of me saying this all the time, but I always reiterate the importance of having retention in our jail, and I think wages play into that, because I can show you stats where our highest liability place in the whole county is that
Yeah.
jail. And when we have a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old kids that are running it, or basically 75% of our staff in there right now, that agitates that high liability. So I think whatever we can do to keep our retention up, and I think part of our A budget helps do that. It's a benefit to the
But the
county.
on-call help
It
that
pays-
too.
Sometimes it'll pay for itself in things we don't always see when
Right.
it comes to that liability issue.
I don't know, 2 biggest bills we've paid come out of the jail since I've been here.
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
And one of them was a boiler.
Well,
Had nothing to do with people.
right.
You said jail, I think you said was 3% for the A budget increase?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I forgot, what did you say was the sheriff's department?
Overall,
Yeah.
4.7.
So it was 4.7 for sheriffs, 3% for jail, and 1 point something, I think you said.
1.6.
For the marshal.
4.7, 1.6, and
You're talking about A
3%.
budget, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
3% in the jail.
4.7% for sheriff, 3% for jail, and what did you say, 1.6%
6.
for court, right?
Security.
Mm-hmm.
Questions?
I don't have any.
That's because the clerk's going to come with the big guillotine next time we talk to him.
Yep, that's right.
All right.
Do you want to talk to him about the code enforcement position?
Oh, yeah, when Hal's here, I mean, he's looking for somebody to help them. I mean, he's got 11 code enforcement deals that have just come up and no, and when they bring you guys the paperwork, they get some action, otherwise they don't. Also, I've got a lot of complaints this year about the Dyer's Road, and weed has no ability to do any enforcement either.
As far on personal property, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, on personal property, and we're talking to BLM, we're talking Forest Service and the railroad and power, or utilities and stuff. But that's what we was talking about. How do we generate, and it needs to come out of your office, somebody to enforce these things, and one is to collect the fines that need to happen and do the.
Which we can't collect fines.
No, I mean, but you issuing
Oh,
means,
okay.
means that we have the ability as a county, I mean, that, just to squirrel a little bit, Jason found out that another office in our, we had $3 million worth of fines that we haven't collected.
$23 million.
$23 million.
$23 million in fines that and restitution that we hadn't collected.
So, talking about these kind of things, how do we do that? How do we enforce some of these things? And I think it's a combination, talking with you and talking to Hal, talking to Road and Bridge and weed, and see what is a position that we could have, or how do we correspond that with the position that we have up at the event center, or, because like somebody writing out letters and delivering them for Dyer's Road. That's an early spring deal that, the person isn't busy up at the event center compared to how it gets now. Just, we gotta have a pretty open discussion of how do we enforce some of these things that people say, well, we don't worry about it anymore. I mean,
Well, I will say, if as far as code enforcement, I don't think it's a certified patrol position. I don't think it should be to that level for the code enforcement, because I don't think you need that extensive, and nor do you want to pay for that amount for that role.
Because it wouldn't need like arresting
Yeah,
responsibility or ability.
I just don't know if that's, which is, I'm with you, I think it's a discussion we need to have as far as how do we accomplish that? Whatever the goal is, whatever, and then we figure out how we accomplish that goal as far as, and maybe it is a matter of us, P&Z having a code enforcement and then using us as a supplemental. If he figures he's gonna have issues, we can always be there. It's like we tell those small towns, some of them that, I know Lava used to have a planning and zoning, or a code enforcement person. And whenever they foresee any problems, they'd call us and we would go with them to do that. So maybe that's something, number one, you don't have to pay them at a certified patrol position rate. And it's just a position that if they need it, we're always, we have someone on all the time, and it's a matter of us, because they're gonna know way ahead of time, this guy is a problem, or this family's gonna be a problem, because I've talked to them before all the citations, these ordinance violations need to be issued. They're gonna know way ahead of time when they need that help.
Yeah.
And then it's just the presence that's there. I don't know, that's just off the top of my head.
Okay, no, it's just something that, like I say, Hal brought it up yesterday, and like I say, this Dyer's Road deal's gotten out of hand. They have no control over, sending out letters or citations or whatever.
And what are other counties doing as far as code enforcements? Do we know?
I can find out.
I don't know, but
Right.
I can see, especially in planning and zoning, it's becoming a bigger deal. I mean, people, just the Lava area, people move into that area, put no trespassing out front, and then they go and build whatever they want. And nothing's permitted, nothing,
Well, is this something we want to decide before this budget?
Before the last minute, like last year?
Yeah. So, because if it is, if it, let's say it ends up under the sheriff's office purview. I just don't want to miss something like we did with the wellness. And I'm not saying that's anybody's fault. This is a matter of, okay, did we equip it properly? And now we've got the position, but we haven't equipped it properly, you know?
Well, and
Whatever that looks like.
what you just said, and whether it needs to be, you know, somebody certified or not certified and stuff, we can at least look in the budget and say, okay, it doesn't matter which department kinda, but where would we put this and what would the cost be?
Maybe we could do a follow-up meeting with Kyle for noxious weed and Hal. And then Tony can come and then just decide what the need is. Then we'll have to determine what the pay could be and then decide where it needs to be, because maybe if it can just be
Because I
a
really,
regular position, but then utilize a deputy when needed.
wouldn't want to overstaff it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And maybe that degree of enforcement isn't necessary all the time, and maybe it's just every once in a while we have issues that a code enforcement needs enough additional presence, that our guys are always around, and maybe it's a better overall look as a county that we're not.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does, and what you said, and even that's kinda what Hal said. Hal said that he could keep them busy, even in off times, in training and different things too. So I think it's a bigger conversation, but since it's been brought up, I think we need to have that discussion, because I don't want it to continue to get out of hand the way it's been getting. It's always tougher then to try to bring it back.
Right.
If we could maybe plan a meeting like in a week or so, because the clerk's recommendation is due, I think, July 11th or 13th. So to add a position after we're trying to make all these cuts to fund is usually a little more difficult.
But I'd still add a position log, you know.
But what pay?
But I agree, we can have the meeting, but just so that we don't forget about it too.
Right, and it's on my list.
Okay.
For new
Okay.
positions, to talk about next week. I don't know if it's a grade 8, if it's a grade 10, if it's a 20. I mean, it's not gonna be a 20, but a range, and then, you know, if we have to maneuver it into a certain department, that's easy. It's just,
Right.
and what the needs
And
would
if
be.
Maybe
you'll
next,
talk-
maybe next Thursday.
And maybe see what the other counties do.
Yep, I'll put out a survey.
I think Braden's watching, maybe he could do a work session request for Thursday to discuss
Okay, Braden, you heard that.
the code enforcement position. I'll see if I get a text.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Chairman, as far as, I guess, at some point, you still don't want to have that discussion about DMV and driver's license.
Oh,
Correct.
Yes. And it just, some counties are combining them, and
I don't know, I guess what's the thought moving forward as far as the goals in that? Is
It's not-
this something that we need to,
it's not gonna be in
Plan, or
this
is
budget year.
okay,
Because
okay. I wasn't sure because I don't know how to.
we don't have the
navigate this.
facilities to put both together right now.
Okay.
And we got so many other projects going on building that I just don't, I just went to that ITD meeting, and that's the gal that was over it. She's one that kind of said, well, you guys just need to combine them, and that's what everybody else is doing. And because I complained about losing funds because they're doing everything online now, and we don't even get a percentage anymore. And so
Okay, well, I just wasn't sure how to navigate that.
all I can tell you is Anita said,
Not it.
not.
I said
Yeah,
it
not
first.
it.
Yeah,
I'll wrestle up for it.
that'd be
Well,
hilarious.
she's in here next, so we can just set that
Tell her we'll arm wrestle for it.
But honestly,
Okay.
I don't see us, we don't have time to move forward with
Okay,
that.
I wasn't sure how to navigate that because I know you were pretty serious about it.
Well,
as
that's
far
the
as
first I'd really heard
conversation.
about it, and
Okay.
so I brought it up to you and Anita, and, but Anita had already heard about it, you'd already heard about it, you two had had discussions, but I don't see it something that's gonna happen, at least in this budget year. If we keep losing funds, we gotta talk seriously about Anita's other department and
The staffing.
the staffing, and so
Okay,
that needs to be a
so
discussion,
when
but
you
I
talk
don't
this
see
budget,
it.
you talk current budget year, correct? Are you talking about?
You're talking
proposed?
25.
26.
26?
Yeah,
26.
26.
'Cause we're working on
26.
25.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
26.
So definitely not in 25.
I-
25.
Okay, all
No, no,
Okay.
Yeah.
I just,
right.
after talking to you and talking to Anita and, I don't know, the housing of it and the switching and staffing needs and stuff, I think
Okay.
it's so much bigger than trying to
Right.
get something in this budget year.
Okay, good. Glad to hear.
The other question I have, because
Okay.
HR made a request for an ID maker for
Uh-huh.
our county employees,
Mhm.
and that's something that is going to be really if we want to continue with IDs for our
After December,
employees,
correct.
after this coming December,
Mhm.
you'll no longer be able to do those.
As far as through driver's license.
Right.
They won't offer the special.
Right.
ITD won't offer the special IDs.
Yeah.
So, and we gave them the ID because we do our own as far as in our office.
Right.
It's one of those printable one cards.
So I think that Matthew came out and talked to.
Yep, and we showed him
To
the
Teresa,
device.
yes.
Yep.
And we,
He's aware of it.
So
yep,
that's where
Pretty
he got his
easy.
pricing and everything
like
from.
every new employee we get comes in Teresa's office, we take a picture, print them out a card. So it's something that can be navigated here pretty easy.
Okay.
I say that until somebody gets assigned it, so.
It's part of orientation.
Yeah, that's.
I mean,
that-
100%, like,
honestly,
that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
You
that-
come in for orientation, you sit there and get your picture taken, and there's your card.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I think.
Here's your card.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Call Anita.
Are you calling me? You want me to